The following was recorded in front of a live studio audience at the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. This is the United Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Quirky Dog Podcast, inspired by some of the quirkiest dogs you can ever imagine and the owners who love them. This podcast is brought to you by the quirky couple themselves, Scott and Jess Williams. Their aim is to educate and entertain. Here's Scott and Jess.
Welcome, guys, and happy Wednesday. Today we are going to talk about toxic positivity, but first we're going to start with the quirky tip of the day. He's got the cigar, he's got the pig, he's doing it all. He's on it. Okay, our quirky tip of the day is brought to you by Viagen Pets. Viagen is a cloning company out of Texas. And as far as how you're going to start this process and if I want to do genetic preservation, what does it look like? You can either go to the services tab on Viagen's website, or you can call them and they can give you the whole down low about how the process works. But if you are ready to take action after you've heard about how great they are for so many weeks, you can either call them or check out their website in the services tab.
If I clone an old dog, am I going to get an old dog back?
Oh, my God. He wasn't a very good listener in science. No, the puppy will be 8 weeks old when you get it, and it will be born as a baby puppy. All right, our actual quirky tip is tick season is here, full on upon us. If you want something topical to put in your yards, not necessarily on the dogs, but directly in the yard to keep, ticks down and all kinds of gross vermin down. No. Cedarside is a product that I really like. Make sure it's actual Cedarside and make sure it's the one that's pet friendly. Also diatomaceous earth, make sure that it's food grade, but you can sprinkle both of those things in your yard to make things less ticky and less buggy. And we've been using it this year, both products, and they've helped us tremendously. Okay, so we are talking toxic positivity. Toxic positivity is basically denying, negative emotions when you're just pretending everything's going great. So the surgeon comes in and says, your spouse is going to die, they're in complete organ failure, and you say, okay, great, we'll be out tomorrow and we'll be getting breakfast and everything will be fine. So you're kind of just not living in reality with emotions. As it relates to dog training, we are going to talk about how positive dog training can actually become toxic and how there can be fallout with this. And yes, we are balanced trainers, and everyone knows this who's listened to the podcast before, but we see a lot of fallout. So we are going to discuss some of that today. And it's not that positive reinforcement dog training is not amazing and it does not have its place in society, but I'm sorry, if you have an aggressive pit bull that has huge dog aggression, we're not just going to give that dog all the agency in the world to make all of his choices and hope that he makes the best choices and shape him into making the right choices when we're actually putting other animals and maybe other humans at risk. So there is a line that we have to draw when it comes to positive dog training and what positive reinforcement dog training looks like and how sometimes it hinders the success of certain teams.
Yeah, I'm speechless, quite frankly, when it comes I deal with this day in and day out, and I have so many clients come to me that have been doing the, force-free, 100% positive classes for months on end. And
sometimes years.
Yeah, and the thing is, they've done a lot of good work. It doesn't take more than a few classes with me to get where they want to get to, which is just teaching the dog no.
And reliability.
Because that's one thing that a lot of these positive reinforcement trainers refuse to do, is to use the word no and reprimand the dog in any way. So these people have done a ton of positive reinforcement. The dog's like the bed exercise as an example. I'll say, what have you learned? They'll say, well, a dog does a bed. I'll say, well, show me. And they'll say, go to your bed, and the dog will fly across the room and get on the bed. But it won't stay there. That's the thing. They're like, but the dog just gets off. The dog looks, the dog has all this engagement, but if you disengage, then the dog gets off and runs all over the room again, things like that. So just, proofing things, and the proofing is something that is kind of, can go on for weeks, but teaching them, you don't get off the bed until I release you, as an example, it doesn't take that long, but people are not getting that kind of instruction. So the dogs, they have a lot of good foundational work. They just don't have the reliability they're looking for.
They don't have any practical usage of what they've been taught, and they can't actually bring this stuff out into the real world. And that's typically why people train dogs. They want to be able to replicate this in the real world. They don't want a dog who's reactive on a leash when it's going for a walk. They don't want a dog jumping on their guests. They don't want a dog, begging at the table while you're eating dinner. All of these little things, there's a practical use for, and there should be a certain time frame in which you can accomplish it. And there is no magic time frame out there, but if we do 4 to 8 classes with people, they're normally quite happy. If we do a board and train anywhere from 2 weeks to a month, and some follow-up classes, they're normally quite happy. For us, we have never really seen a dog not have significant improvement within 1 to 2 months. And that's even when the owner's involved and they're doing classes and they're doing their due diligence. So when you're kind of sold this line of, it could take a couple of years before you get to where you want to be, it's a journey, you're always, it's a process, this, that, and the other thing, you're getting frustrated and your dog is having rep upon rep upon rep of bad behavior. And sometimes when you're using food and you're just using positive reinforcement training and everything else, you're rewarding that behavior. People want to distract the dog with reactivity on the leash, so they pull out food. Well, you're also reinforcing this state of mind when the dog is in this like, go, go, go. I want to kill that lady pushing the stroller. I want to kill that squirrel that ran across the street. You're reinforcing the dog's state of mind. So there's a lot of finesse when you use food. There's a lot of finesse when you use compulsion. It's not that you can just use these tools without knowing what you're doing as well. But you need to be instructed properly, and you should be seeing progress. And as far as sport dog trainers go, yes, I can see some people being able to shape their dog's life to be the athlete and the companion that they want them to be. For pet dog training, from where we see it, our clients are not willing to take months and years to, mold this puppy into what they want. They just want a dog that can live comfortably in the family, that isn't going to be destroying stuff, that isn't going to be bothering the neighbors, that isn't going to be running out the front door down the street. They just want some basic stuff, and they don't have the know-how, and they don't really have the time or the patience to wait and to make it this lovely journey where the dog has made all the choices. So you need to be kind of living in reality here when it comes to pet dog training of how can we make these people feel like they're making progress and they can actually keep the dog in their home.
Yeah, and I think that there's kind of two, and I find a lot of clients that do have the patience and they have spent a lot of time working this, and then they've just got to the point where they need to seek a different methodology because they're just not getting where they want to be. But I think there's two groups. There's the trainers of the all positive movement that have made an ethical choice to not correct their dog in any situation. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's your dog. You can train that way. And then there's the clients of these people that haven't made an ethical choice. They're just trying to find a dog trainer. And these websites are talking about, don't ever see anybody that's going to correct your dog. And this is the way you should do it, which of course nobody wants to correct their dog. So everybody is going to be naturally drawn towards this all positive thing rather than the medieval trainer that's going to hurt their dog, which, I don't know anyone that does that, but that's the alternative to the all positive. So it's an attractive thing, and I think that if you want to train your dog in an all positive way, you have every right to, and you should do that and take as long as it takes, and that's the journey that you're on. But the average client, they call me and they call the positive trainers also because their dog is unruly more often than not, and they have issues that need to be fixed.
Yeah.
They don't want to be dog trainers. They have problems they want fixed.
Yeah.
And, some of these problems can be handled in just a couple of classes. It doesn't have to be, months. And like just walking your dog down the street, that shouldn't take, with the average dog, that shouldn't take more than a couple of weeks of, well, let's say a month. You do it one class a week, and in a month's time, the average person should be able to walk their dog down the street past distractions. Yeah. I'm not talking about extreme dogs. I'm talking about the average dog out there. It's not a big deal. But if you can't get to that point, then, and here's the other thing that, talk about toxic positivity. The thing that gets me the most is that these people that are so positive are also so aggressive online, where they're just tearing into people that don't train the way they train.
Yeah, colleagues or clients or anything.
I don't see balanced trainers out there just berating positive trainers, but I do see positive trainers. Like we have a friend in New York that posted a puppy in a crate that was noisy in the crate, young puppy, and she was mopping up her facility, and within 15 minutes, the puppy quieted down and was fine, and then she went and released the puppy, and everything was great. And I contacted her, and I said, hey, that was a great video. You know, that the puppy is learning to just deal with some uncomfortable situations. Like, you got to be in the crate now. I'm not going to keep throwing treats in the crate to keep you quiet. I have something else to do. And the dog, within 15 minutes, the dog had settled down and was fine in the crate. And she was berated online. She said so many people were calling, say that she should be disgusted with herself for how she treated that puppy. Just crazy stuff. And it's like, it's unfortunate, you know, that there's so many people that are so quick online to spew this hatred and criticism towards anything that isn't what they think is how everything should be in the world, you know?
It doesn't sound very positive. It sounds pretty toxic. All right, let's go to break super quick, and when we get back, we're going to talk about this a bit more.
Want to keep up with all the latest from the Quirky Dog podcast like me and Murphy here? Then make sure you head on over to the YouTube channel and subscribe. Or if you prefer to listen to the madness, go on over to iTunes or Spotify and follow the Quirky Dog podcast. And hey, while you're there, leave a rating and review and let them know what you think of the show. Until then, keep it quirky.
Another point of this that I want to discuss as far as it relates to the toxic positivity, and especially as that relates to dog training, is making excuses. So, you know, it's going to be natural that a client's going to say after 6 months, like, why isn't this getting better? And a lot of times, and this can happen in the balanced community as well. I'm not saying that this is just a positive reinforcement community line, but there's always a reason for, well, it was the dog's past trauma, or it was the dog's, you know, what it's holding on to from when, you know, you trained with this tool. And there's just like this, we're deferring blame onto this ambiguous reasoning, which it might be true, it might not be true. No one can ask a dog, why are you feeling this way? Why isn't this getting better? What's going on inside of you? Let's dig deep here. We can't really get the dog's response, but there's a lot of external things that we blame, whether it be environment or past traumas or anything else. And that's not necessarily helping anyone. It's actually hindering your progress, because now you're saying, well, you know, the dog is almost disabled in a sense because of XYZ, and the dog was overstimulated and over threshold, and, you know, all of this stuff, when you're not actually progressing towards the goal that you want to reach.
Well, you're justifying a lack of progress is what's going on. And I mean, that's where we hear the sibling syndrome, global fear disorder, all these labels for why your dog can't be trained. And some people really they gravitate to the labels. Oh, my dog has no ankles. My dog can't do this. My dog has got this problem. And so that's their whole world now, is dealing with this dog that has this global fear disorder, as an example, which means it's afraid of everything, everywhere, all the time.
Yeah.
That's what they have for a dog. And it's just...
It's making your dog a victim, and it's not allowing your dog to thrive. And it's debilitating your dog in a sense that, okay, well, they can't get out of this state. They can't change. It's like if you're a paraplegic now, like, yeah, you're a paraplegic. You're not going to walk again. I mean, yes, now with technology, there may be some bionic stuff and everything else, but you're labeling, this is what it is, and we can't get better. And you're stopping any progress, and you're stopping any chance of progress. And I guess we're just here to tell you guys today that there's a big, wide world out there. We want to have a toolbox filled with every single dog training tool available, including clickers, including gentle leaders, including treats. We bring treats everywhere. We're big on the Dollar General.
We go through a lot of string cheese.
Yeah, we're big on that. It's a good treat. It's easy. Scott likes to snack on it. We are all about introducing the positive side of dog training wherever and whenever we can. But there is another side of dog training that does involve compulsion. It does involve a leash pop. It does involve a martingale. There are prong collars. There are e-collars. There are tools out there available to you. And it is okay to venture over into those tools. Again, if you're ethically okay with them. And Scott's so right. There's an animal rights movement going on, and that's fine. Let's call them an animal rights movement. And then there's actual science of how animal behavior works with 4 quadrants, where people explore all 4 quadrants and have very, very good success with dogs, with all species. So let's be conscious of what the reality of dog training looks like, and not just be spewing our toxic positivity everywhere, because it's fine. Spread your movement, spread your joy, spread your love, but that should not come at the expense of putting down others of making all these rationalizations of why things aren't happening, of justifying behavior that you can't, get to the point where the client wants it. The whole reason someone pays you is because they have a problem and they want that problem fixed. And that problem should be able to be fixed within a few weeks, if not within a few months. You should not be going to the same class year after year after year, having to be behind your reactive dog wall and still not being able to go for a walk in your neighborhood. I'm sorry, that is a problem. And someone has to get up here and say, we need to do a hard stop at this and recognize what's actually going on.
Yeah, quite often it winds up getting worse over time because the dog is just getting more repetitions of blowing up, and then that just becomes the routine.
Yes.
And I had a young Malinois early on, 20 plus years ago, that developed dog reactivity on leash, and I had done a ton of training with this dog, and I couldn't compete with him. I couldn't walk on the field with this particular dog because he would see another dog and I didn't trust him. He was going to go. And nobody at the club could help me. And I found a trainer that we've had on this podcast previously that said, yeah, bring him over. Let's see what's going on with him. And within 5 minutes, he had this dog off leash, healing all around a bunch of dogs. And he said, wow, what a great dog you have. I mean, he was just so enamored with my dog because I had done all this great foundational training, but I wasn't correcting him effectively. My leash work wasn't effective with this particular dog. And the trainer that I went to had very good leash handling. And he was able to establish a relationship with my dog and get to a point where we could take him off leash within minutes. I'm talking within 5 minutes. He had this dog doing everything. And it was just a joy to see because it gave me hope. I looked at the dog, I was like, wow. I didn't feel frustrated, oh, I can't do it, he can. I said, okay, I'm going to come to you and I want you to train me and show me how to do this because obviously it's me, it's not the dog.
Yeah, and that's
more often than not, it's you or it's your trainer. It's not the dog.
Yeah, and that's a good point you bring up, that it's not necessarily always the methodology. Sometimes it's just a new set of eyes. But make sure that you don't have toxic repetition or whatever it is. Make sure that you're not intertwining toxicity into your dog training, because we see day in, day out, time and time again, people's lives be transformed, dogs' behavior be. It almost makes me want to well up. Dogs' behavior that they couldn't even be comfortable in their own skin, they can now sit there, take a nap, they can go for a walk, they can live a life like a normal dog.
They're not trembling.
With very little modification. Everything is just very smoothly progressed with the correct direction. That is out there for you too. So please give yourself hope and give yourself at least an option in your head that maybe the road that I'm going down hasn't been working for me, but there's other things available to me. And if you ethically are not opposed to balanced training, whether that just means a leash pop with a flat collar or, maybe a plastic pinch collar or whatever it may be, look into it, because there is a future out there and there is hope out there that you may not have seen yet. And there are some phenomenal positive reinforcement dog trainers out there. We've had many of them on the podcast before. We are not knocking the positive reinforcement movement. But as Scott said, we want to be open towards them, and it would be great if they would be open towards us, because the whole goal here is to have as many well-behaved dogs in society staying in the homes that they were destined to be in and not having to be rehomed or behaviorally euthanized or anything else. So let's work together for that goal. And the last thing we want to do is shame clients or frustrate clients or make clients feel like it's their fault and they're not going to get anywhere and they're the problem, that their dog, their dog can't make progress. That's not fair. The blame game is not helping anyone. So please make sure whatever you're putting out there in the industry, you're actually helping the progress of dogs and their owners.
Yeah, and it's really hard to set up some of these scenarios too. I remember with your dog when you first started getting, I think it was Sync off leash. No, not Sync, another one, because it was either Jimmy or Sync, but we let them loose in the yard to play, and you wanted to call the dog out of play. And the dog didn't come. Young pup, not a pup, but an adolescent dog. But we were able to control the other dogs to stop the fun by downing the other dogs in the field. So now this dog couldn't play anymore and just went out and rounded her dog up, said, no, come on back here. And so there's a lot of techniques that can be used without being harsh. But it's almost impossible to find someone that has all of these other dogs and all these situations that you can set up to make that stuff happen. Because if you just go to the beach, those dogs aren't going to stop playing. Your dog's going to blow you off and then have the time of his life running around on the beach with other dogs, and that's a bad rep.
Yeah.
And now it's like, screw you, I'll come back when I feel like it, which is never.
Yeah, and I think the most important thing here is if you're hearing that it's possible, you need to see that it's possible. Ask your trainer, can I see that with your dog? Can I see that with your client's dog? Can I see it? Because that is the only way you believe it, is when you see someone with their own dog, and typically it's a professional, get to a level that you weren't able to get to with your own dog, or you haven't seen another dog with that level of control before. And then there's hope. You can believe it. Just like Scott's saying with this Malinois from early on in his career, like, you need to see it to believe it. So make sure you're not just being told something and being read a whole list of protocols and this is how it has to be. You need to make sure that the proof is in the pudding. So ask them, can I see it? And if not, can you refer me to someone who can help?
Yeah, and also, you want to have fun with your dog, and you don't want to be going to a trainer that's going to make you feel in your gut bad that this is not how I want to be working with my dog, because if that's how you feel, you shouldn't be working with that person either.
Yeah.
You need to find someone that's compassionate and empathetic to you and your feelings about your dog who you love, and know that, we have a common goal in mind here. We want to, as an example, get this dog off leash and treat the dog fairly and ethically and make it happen for him if possible. And if the people aren't willing, we all have that ethical line about what we're willing to do and what we're not willing to do with our dogs. But know what that line is, and then don't cross that line. Because when you cross the line, you feel like shit. You don't feel good. You're not going to reinforce the behavior if you don't feel good about the method you're being shown. So there is a medium there. There's a happy medium where you can, sometimes it involves just letting your dog drag a 30-foot line around on the beach for maybe a few months.
Yeah.
You call the dog isn't listening, you grab that leash and you get him back to you until he learns that you have to come when I call you. It's not going to be, you're going to be on leash for 6 months, and now you're off leash. And now the dog is just like, wow, newfound freedom. And they're not coming. And you're like, what? I tried everything. It's not working. There's transitional steps. It doesn't have to be, I'm going to blast my dog with an e-collar if they don't come.
Yeah, food for thought. And make sure whatever trainer you're working with, whatever methodology it is, you're not feeling like shit afterward. Make sure you have a good fit. All right, thank you guys so much for joining us. I hope we gave you a few things to think about. And if you liked this episode, if you resonated with this episode, share it with others so they can get the message as well. Thank you so much for being valued Quirky Dog listeners. And in the meantime, keep it quirky. Bye, guys.
The views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, or callers of this program do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe, the United Podcast Network, its partners, or affiliates.